Recruiting is something that BYU has been doing very well, not just in basketball, but football as well. Utah was close to really making like the in-state recruiting for the 26 class. If Utah was able to close the deal on Celeste Moa, I think that would have been a nice push.
So close.
But unfortunately, they didn't. So BYU is a top 20 recruiting class at the time we're recording this, and Utah, last I checked, is still outside the top 40. So that's definitely hurts. If it's not, recruiting isn't the end all be all. As we know, Utah's at 50 right now, but
I didn't even think it was at the top 50 yet. They're at 50 right now.
Okay. They are just at 50, barely in there. What have you made of BYU's recruiting success? And Brock Harris, Bot Mulitalo, those are two of my favorite players in the state. I do think that's massive for BYU.
Don't forget the man, the myth, the legend that is already Ryder Lyons, everybody. But here's the thing, JT. In many respects, and you most of your Ute followers and listeners will know that I've been doing sports radio here in Salt Lake City for a long time. In so many different ways, this feels like the inverse of what Utah and BYU recruiting has been for quite literally since Utah went into the Pac-12. Routinely, Utah would have at worst felt like a top 30 class, whereas BYU settled somewhere between 50 and 70 in those 24/7 sports rankings. And I'm talking, that was an annual deal. It felt like, BYU would pop up every so often, maybe get into the 40s, and Utah often would jump inside the top 25. But BYU is really doing work on the transfer portal side of things, but more importantly in the high school ranks here in the state of Utah. And that is in no small part due to the fact that last year, simply put, Utah was 5-7, BYU's 11-2, ranked 13th in the country. Players want to go where they're going to, at least in their mind, have a chance to win at a high level, and BYU's cleaning up on that right now. Is that going to continue for the foreseeable future? Hey, from my side of things, I'm all for it, because obviously that means good for business in my world when it comes to covering the Cougars on a daily basis. But I've got a trust that if and when the Kyle Whittingham run is over at Utah, Morgan Scalley will keep things going for Utah. The biggest thing I've got concerns about, JT, is if BYU can truly own this state as much as they have in this recruiting class, Utah has got to be concerned that if they can't make inroads in state, it's going to hurt what has been an absolute pillar of strength for the Utes over the years.
I believe it's the first time in 5 years Utah hasn't landed multiple top 5 players in the state.
That's the thing about this. As I said, I've covered sport. I've been doing the sports radio thing in Salt Lake, and we talk recruiting often on DJ and PK on the show that I produce for the KSL Sports Zone. And it's been stunning, quite frankly. And yes, the Celeste Moa thing, it threw a bunch of people for a loop. I absolutely believe that wholeheartedly, that it threw certain people that believed in their heart of hearts that Celeste was going to stay in state. I had heard for many, many months until recently that he had eyes to go out of state, and then it had shifted where it sounded like Utah was absolutely in the mix. Well, ultimately, the intel I was provided early on proved to be the true fact that he wanted to go out of the state of Utah, and that hurts because Utah, as you mentioned, they don't really have anybody into the top 10 of the state of Utah, which, let's be honest, it's a gem when it comes to recruiting in the state of Utah. We may not have the overall numbers that a Texas, a Georgia, a California, or a Florida have in terms of the overall athletes, simply due to the fact we don't have as big of a population. But I'm telling you, on a per capita basis, the state of Utah is absolutely punching above its weight when it comes to the quality of athletes that the state produces. And BYU's been cleaning up on it, and they're going to benefit from it for years to come.
Totally agree with that. And especially if we look at what BYU has been able to do too. I mean, not only we mentioned some of these guys, right? Like the Tassilia Kanas, the Hunter Clegg, Ciale Acera, the offensive lineman who was at Timpview and then went to Bishop Gorman. That is a hard last name to pronounce. Jake.
Kalani Avalu. There you go. Yeah.
That's why we used to work together. Good partnership right there. So you just look at what this BYU team's been able to do, and it has been really strong. And Utah's got guys I like, right? Like Jaron Poole is a nice get for Utah. I think Kenan Poole will be a good player too. I actually really like Isaiah Guy. I forget to say Timpview safety. I think he's going to end up being a guy for this team too. But it's unfortunate for Utah that they have lost that stronghold on recruiting in the state, because who are some of Utah's top players right now? Smith Snowden, Lander Barton, and Spencer Fotto. And all of those guys were massive recruiting wins. And if BYU does end up, and like I said, maybe they will still be at the top of the conference this year, reach it there. Like it'll probably be in part because Zakana came on as a pass rusher and was a guy.
And that to that point, JT, is Utah and BYU are never going to keep every kid in this state. Utah as a state is too well known to the Pac-12 schools, clear across the country in terms of the quality of athletes this state produces. So you are going to lose guys out of state. That's just a simple fact of life. But BYU and Utah need to keep as many of these guys at home. And the nice part is a lot of the kids that grow up in the state, I'm saying guys who moved in maybe in high school and played here. I'm talking guys, true homegrown talents. A lot of people don't want to leave this state, and you've got to make it compelling for them to want to stick around. You know how you do that? If you're Utah, you just go back and bounce back this year. You believe that Utah can make a run at the Big 12 title game. If they pull that off, guess what? It would not surprise me to see this recruiting battle come 2027 class completely different. Right now, BYU's got the upper hand, and they're going to have to maintain that. NIL and transfer portal and all that stuff comes into effect when it comes to that. I know that they've changed the rules on this, JT, but I think you and I both believe it's one lawsuit away from going right back to the way it was. It just feels that way. But the bigger point is BYU has got a hot hand right now. They're going to have to maintain that. But Utah, they can get right back off the deck and right back into this race with a strong season in 2025.
It can flip quickly. And I think Utah's offense, Jake, if you had a penny for every time someone said this, you'd be a rich man too. Like, this offense under Jason Beck could finally be that explosive one. They've been wanting it to be a long time. So that's where you maybe get a chance to land the elite quarterback like BYU did this class.
Yeah, you need to get top shelf quarterback talent, and you need to get some wide receivers at Utah. Guess what? The type of offense that Kyle Whittingham has been running for the past 10-ish years with the double and triple tight end sets, guess what? Quarterbacks and wide receivers are like, yeah, thanks, but I'm going to go over here. You can change that with Jason Beck's offense. I fully acknowledge that. Aaron Roderick's offense is attractive to guys like Gridiron Lions because it's high-flying, wide open. It features deep shots. It's got strong running game elements to it. That's what guys want to play in this modern era of college football, and I will tip my cap to Kyle Whittingham. It had to be really, really difficult for him to say, hey, I'm going to embrace this whole newfangled spread offense that Jason Beck's bringing to Salt Lake City. But I got to wholeheartedly believe that Morgan Scalley is the head coach in waiting was saying, Kyle, you got to understand, if we want to get the type of dudes that can help us get to the top of the Big 12, get to the Big 12 title game, win college football playoff games and the like, we have to have the type of offense that guys want to play in. And that's what Jason Beck offers.
It is. And the one thing Utah's done well is they've just developed their offensive linemen so well. So that's where you've continued to land the elite guys there. You got an Ike Garcia waiting in the wings, a guy from Utah, 4-star recruit a season ago. You land Obot, a strong recruit out of the state of Idaho, top ranked guy there. So there's some optimism and hope still for Utah's football recruiting class, but really would have been nice if they could have added that cherry on top too. One last wrinkle I'll just throw out there about just speaking of recruiting and everything. One thing just kind of funny about this year's matchup, John Henry Daly and Logan Fano could end up being the two starting defensive ends who are making some of the plays against BYU. So it is kind of interesting that we talk so much about Tanu Vasa, and he's clearly the best of that bunch. But it would be interesting to see if those former Cougars do end up making a difference this year for Utah.
It would be interesting because obviously BYU, when they had those two committed and obviously inside their program, they're very excited about the future for them. It's crazy how things change in college football, and it continues to change very quickly. I never would have thought in a million years, JT, that Tausili Akana was going to be on BYU's roster, but here we are. Nusi Taumweapayao from Westlake High School. He was all dead set on going to Stanford. Guess what? He's in Provo now. It's crazy how quickly things can change. The nice part is there's talent and hope that it comes to bear and shows for both of these programs.
But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about the baseball action under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I'm using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. You know what else is available on FanDuel? The 2025 win totals for Utah and BYU. I already said I'm a little down on BYU.
Over on the Cougars.
But guess what, Jake? I'm going to take the over. 6.5 is low. And you guys have a favorable schedule, I'll say, too, with a couple of those games. So I do have BYU getting over 6.5. I'm right in that. I'm at 7 right now. I think 7-5 right now. But I think 6.5 is too low for this team that was a contender just a season ago. That's how I feel about BYU. How do you feel about Utah at over or under 7.5?
I already said I have them at 8-4 at minimum. So I'd be hitting the over on that.
We are going to agree on one thing this show, and we can both agree that you should head over to FanDuel to check out all the odds for college football, NFL, or whatever sports action floats your boat today. That's going to do it for our show today. We look forward to seeing you guys on tomorrow's Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars.